Hi, Tom Lynch here in the studio, getting ready for a workshop in a day or two. Always asked about the art supplies, and I send out an art supply list, and I could just hear people saying, okay, great, signing up for another class, and I got to buy this extra tube of paint, or yeah, I've got good paper, what difference does it make? So I'm not even going to tell you right away the art materials I'm using. I really want to take you through the evolution on how and why I've changed over the years. So nothing wrong with certain materials, but the way I paint, those materials haven't progressed along with me. They're ready for a certain look. So I'll share with you some older images, share with you how back in the day I grew up on Winsor Newton and Arches paper, and they're not bad papers. No, I'm not trying to badmouth them and say mine's better, but the way I paint, that's what makes a difference. I wanted the evolution of my painting to go along with the evolution of my materials that kind of evolved with me. So take a look over my shoulder. I'll get my keyboard from Josh here any second now and switch over to that. So the beauty of live. Let me have you take a look at the some of the earlier paintings that I've done back in the day. I was much more interested in depth and contrast, lights and darks, and maybe a little bit of sunlight and shadow. Also back in the day I was a lot more detailed and realistic in my form of painting, and was satisfied with that for a while. Slowly I kept knowing there was something more or something extra, and when I introduced a little bit more color, I liked the response that the people had. There was a little more wow. It made my sunlight look a little brighter by having a little more color in that sunlight as well. So I liked the response that the people had in looking at the painting. I liked my feel of looking at my own work. It made me feel good. So I do push the envelope, with sunlight and shadow. I do push the envelope with lights and darks and color. And I make use of color as a way in which to eliminate detail. So that variety of color, that brightness of color in a certain area, whether it be a rooftop, whether it be a grass, a tree trunk, a leaf, anywhere, I then don't feel it needs detail. That's interesting enough. Those brightness of color, the feel good that it gives you, as I said, that higher contrast, it talks a little louder. I put a mat around my result and go, hey, I like where it's at. I'm not going to mess with it much further. Let me share with you a couple more images. So now I do enjoy, the richness of color. I just had a class, teaching, Monet's garden and the freshness of color and the liveliness of the spring and the clean, rich color, in the water. Even a path, had a fresher, cleaner color to it, along with some nice, rich contrast. So there's where the brand of paint, I couldn't get this kind of a dark, and let me show you this dark. I couldn't get these darks to be that clean, that rich, that lively, with Payne's Gray, neutral tint, or lamp black. And so now I can share with you, I use Sennelier for that reason. The extra color, they use a honey in the mixture, so their color just has a little extra burst. I like when I squeeze out the tube of paint, it melts into the palette. So when I'm mixing, it energizes my brush right away. I don't have to massage or dissolve the color, so I have ready color getting into my palette right away, and then I can lay down a nice richness of color because the brand is more colorful already, and that's one of the reasons I like it. Now, I get a bonus along the way. There's a certain characteristic called oxgall that's in the majority of brands. They don't have that, so dry color will then be able to be re-wet and softened once again, not only on the palette, but on the painting as well. One last image, and I want to share with you a couple of things about color. I also enjoy doing some powerful darks. I like doing, night scenes, the drama of the night scene. And so this is getting dark, but it's not getting dull, not getting gray, not getting too, dirty looking. So the colors that I use, Sennelier doesn't have a lot of white paint in their yellow ochre or their cerulean blue. Those are colors that I make use of in my palette. So, that's an important part of developing the painting. So I like still a clean, fresh, transparent look. Even though it's dark, I can still have the transparency along the way. So let me share with you a couple characteristics where the paper makes a difference. So if you like color and you like contrast, And I think you've got the idea. I like color and contrast, but now you know why. It just helps one replace the need for detail. And hey, if you're not that colorful, well, you can start out colorful and you could always gray it down. It's easier to gray down a dirty color, easy to gray down a bright color than it is to brighten up a dirty color. So that reason alone, you might want to expand. Let's look at the palette. I'll share with you, some choices of colors that would also be helpful for you. So I have, a light, medium, and a dark value of my yellows, a light, medium, and dark of my reds. Even though these might look similar, they are different than one another. Light, medium, and dark blues, light, medium, and dark greens at the same time. Then I have a few specialty colors that I make use of to enhance my focal point. So there's a opera rose. Here's a phthalo blue. I love sunlight, so I want a bright yellow. A nice, clean, bright yellow. It's called lemon yellow. Other brands' yellow ochre, the name lemon yellow is kind of dirty, but in Sennelier, their brightest yellow. Cad yellow isn't going to work if you like doing sunsets. And I'll use a Sennelier red to get a nice, bright sunset color in my paintings. A richness of sunlight. I like doing sunlight and shadows. So here's a phthalo green light. And so those are somewhat important colors for me as well, because I make use of them when I want to have a very strong impact area. You know it as focal point. I call it an impact area. So I have those colors I showed you as enhancers, and I want a super dark as well that's not dirty. And here's where that blue indanthrene. So no one has a color. Winsor Newton didn't have a color like that, and it wouldn't work as well if it was a Payne's gray, a neutral tint, or a lamp black. Here are a few other color mixtures that might be something in your repertoire. We have the focal point variety you saw, even with grays, how they can be much more colorful because of the color intensity, as I have said, to make that stand out. Everyone has trouble with greens, but have some bright, clean variety of greens, and your green areas won't be dull. And as I said, the darks. Look at all of the rich, colorful variety in those darks area. Not too opaque, not too dull, very exciting and intense. So there's a reason for the paint. Here's a selection of colors that I would suggest, that light, medium, and dark, choices. And then those specialty colors for focal point, those specialty colors for the sunlight and shadow effect that make a difference in the paintings. Let me take a minute and share with you a thought or a word on the paper I use as well. So I'd like a paper that doesn't let the color soak in too fast or soak in too far. I'll touch on spray bottles in a minute, and that has an effect on it as well. The softness of Sennelier doesn't clog my spray bottles at the same time, so there's another factor that fits in with me. I like in a workshop, if a student makes a mistake, we can scrub it off and then repaint in that same area. I like for my own paintings, when I might have a deep dark shadow, well, let me show you this painting up close and let you see exactly what I'm talking about, because there's a unique effect on this particular paper that lets me lift off dry color easily, and then I can repaint over that dry color. And I haven't even told you what paper it is yet, but there you can take a look at this area here. I was able to create all of that art by lifting off dry color. At one time, that was very dark, solid dark, just like you see, above my hand here. I have an example. So at one time, it was dark like this. I was able to re-wet the color because it doesn't have oxgall. So Sennelier does not include oxgall, which hardens the color after it dries. So I could wipe off color for the fence post, for the rooftop, for the tree and the branches. And then, even a better issue, I can repaint where I've done the lifting. So other papers, you can't paint over an area where you've done heavy lifting. I went back and added a few touches of color later on, which I could do because it lets me do that. I'll give you a little example. Let's do that. Let's take a spare sheet of paper here and share with you the lifting technique. So for example here, instead of having protected with liquid frisket, I think a suggestion of buildings and so forth in this background, I was able to lift off dry color and capture the look of architecture away from the focal point, and there it is, Look at all the art that I was able to create by lifting off dry color. So this area at one time was just like this. I'll give you a quick little example on how that works out. So that's the paper helping me paint areas that are in a shadow, somewhat subtle. Let's say that I wanted, you know, I have a fence line going across the front of this. So the sailboats, the rooftops, all of that was created by this, painting with water on my brush, blotting for a second, and then lifting off that color. Yes, that allowed me to lift off that dry color. I could go back, let's say on the sailboat, and I could still, now I did that earlier, lift off. Now I can come back and paint over that area and hold a nice sharp edge. Maybe there was going to be a tree, you know, going through the area of the rooftop, and part of the trees will be a light value in a dark area. So just that section alone, I'll turn the paper, just that section alone I can lift off. So I could have branches being showcased in that area. Let me just connect that one last branch over to the tree, over to the rest of the tree. So I could indicate those things, and if for some reason I didn't like what I had, then I could just take water on my finger and then just smooth it out and blend it back in. So I have the ability to play with after it's dry, to make corrections after it's dry. Let me even share with you this idea. I was thinking that that section back there was a little too dark. I'll back you up, you can see this. So now I'm going to share with you how I can gradually lift off color, and I'm going to use a spray bottle. So I have a trigger sprayer, and I'm going to spray off paint and just lightly remove color. Let's say that that was just a little dark, and everyone in the room starting to back away. So thanks very much. So the starting to remove some dry color. So again, this paper is completely dry. The paint is completely dry. You can see nothing's happening here. I'll lay the towel, turn it upside down, and let you watch this. Watch color lightly disappear. So I'm going to just take a little bit of color off. So there I could spray off and remove some of that paint right there. So it was like this before, and I was able to just lightly remove, you know, 10% or more of the color. So a fine mist spray, just lay a towel on the whole thing flat. And so here's where having that particular paper, and now I'll tell you it's Fabriano, they have the extra white, Artistico. I like the extra white because it makes the colors pop. So if you like color, and guess what? I'm using a trick. I'll tell you the secret. I'm using bright color and a variety of color to replace doing detail. Simply enough, whether it be a tree, a roof, a wall, a mountain, that little change of color and the color being brighter, it's interesting enough, and I don't feel the need to add more brush strokes. So I get away from detail, utilizing that freshness of color, and the white paper helps that color look brighter. The white paper makes my contrast look bolder. So that's where the extra white of the Fabriano can really make a difference. So here's a sheet of the extra white, and I'm not going to mention the other brands, but look at how not as white. So if you can compare the extra white, I'll compare it to a sheet that is the extra white, so comparing apples and apples. So look right there. So there's the little yellower, and here's the extra white that the Fabriano has. I also have found I could use either side, whereas the paper I've used before, I could only use the front side because the paint would soak in too far. So I like the fact that the paint doesn't soak in too far or soak in too fast, and I like the extra white for that reason. So as my art went away from detail, went away from limited color to being more colorful, more exciting, play of sunlight and shadow, rays of light, the way you saw me lift off paint, that's how I showcase. I'll grab for you here. I showcase the rays of light in a painting. So I take a dry painting and I spray off color with the same spray bottle that I lightly removed color as well. So sharing with you a couple items like that. Let me just touch on the palette and the arrangement of colors in my palette and let you see how that comes into play. But there's those rays of light after the painting was completely done, was able to spray off and capture that effect because the paper let me do it. If the painting was old, the dry color was old, then it was the brand of paint that let me lift off dry color. In my palette, I select a light, medium, and a dark value of color. And so I have a light, medium, and a dark yellow. I have a light, medium, and a dark red, a light, medium, and a dark blue, a light, medium, and a dark green. And so some specialty colors, I use an opera rose. When I want my focal point to sing, to glow, I use a phthalo blue. When I have strong shadows, or I want that focal point to have a special blue that cerulean and cobalt and ultra doesn't quite have it be as exciting. If I want a glow of sunlight, I want a super bright yellow. That's Sennelier's lemon yellow. That color just radiates sunlight when you use it. And I can even come back after a dry painting. So I had little bits of white, you know, in this painting in a few spots. Little bits of white, and I glazed it with that yellow. So look at how that yellow just made that area pop. Look at how the phthalo blue helped the feeling of shadows. Look at how the strong dark of blue and danthorine made that focal point, you know, just pop off the page. So that's what I like to have, is my focal point have that kind of radiance, intensity, and glow. So there's the arrangement. There's no special rule of thumb, you know, for the placement of the colors in my palette. I've taken one out. Now I use phthalo. Was another thing I found with the Sennelier was their phthalo green I can lift off. It doesn't stain the paper like phthalos that I was used to using. And so now I've got an extra green. My dark and cool color green is phthalo green. As far as brushes, down the road, it isn't a matter of having a lot of brushes, but I'll have a good quality of a brush. I have a lot of work with flat brushes, but the flat brush has a thick belly. You can save money by having a nice flat sable brush, but if it doesn't have a big thickness, then it's not going to be able to do as much for you or hold as much. So a 3/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, I do a lot of, you know, work with a liner brush. I have an old Raphael brush that's been serving me for probably about 30 years, haven't replaced it yet. And the round brush is a blend, but it also has a little extended length out. So whether it be the Raphael or the silver brush brand, that's the particular brushes. And you notice I don't have a lot of brushes. I like to tell you, if you had a chance to take a look in the studio, you would see around me, I must have about 15 of these jars that have brushes in them. So it isn't a matter of having a lot of brushes, but a few good quality brushes. I'll tell you though, it still is going to be the brush holder that's going to make the difference. So even though I'm using a sable brush, and there's going to be an inability in a few years to even get sable brushes, so we'll be only synthetic or blends down the road. So I have a sable brush, I've relied on it, it lasts me a long time. That's that extra little characteristic. I can share with you a last minute thought about spray bottles. I do a lot of things with spray bottles. I make art with them. It can paint the grass, it can paint a country road, a sandy beach, a crashing wave. I use it with water to soften edges spontaneously. And what's different about spray bottles is the one that I have had designed is I can lightly tap, after I prime it, I can lightly tap, and what comes out are different size dots. So instead of them all being the same size dot, I get different size dots, and I can make more art of that. I can turn that into leaves by expanding it with clear water. So I'll give you a super close-up of that. So it's not just leaves, but it will do leaves as well. So you can see how I can expand that into the, you know, the look of leaves for trees, which I do quite a bit. I talked about, I'll sneak in here, all those tumbling water, crashing waves, all that turbulence, that was all spray bottle, you know, with a lot of blue in it. The grass, we had one earlier. So this grass was painted with spray bottles. A whole different effect, a whole different look. I had a lot of areas of ground. I didn't want the same thing again and again, you know, just brushwork along the way. And so there's where spray bottles, I use one in each color. but you can get by with, you know, 8 of them. And then now and then I'll use a spray bottle that has a fine mist ability. So here's where the store-bought spray bottles, I have a store-bought one here. I'll share with you what it does. And so you can see it just sprays out a fine mist, although there's a lot of times in a painting, I will take that fine mist sprayer as a finishing touch. So the outer sides to this painting, I use the fine mist. At one time, the trees over here were this bright. The contrast over here was too strong. And so I finished off this particular painting to help the effect of glow of light in here by fine mist spray. So it's like an airbrush to quiet down the white space, to quiet down some of the bright colors or the high contrast or the sharp edges. So I can transfer from that to being a nice glow such as this with a fine mist top. So I could spend, you know, all the time talking about spray bottles. I like working with them. Great for leaves, great for grass, you know, great for gardens. I had a workshop, we did all the flowers in the foreground were, you know, some different spray bottle colors. Just adds a little bit fun of the process of painting. You could use a sponge. If you do the tapping, the paint goes up and down and everywhere. Sponge is close but not quite, so there's a thought for spray bottles, a thought for some of the brushes that I'm using. So if you're in one of my workshops and you're thinking, oh great, now I wants me to try out or use these other things, it's not that I'm asking you to use the materials I'm using. I'm sharing with you how those materials make a difference in my painting, how the extra white makes my colors pop, makes my contrast look stronger, the ability to wipe off dry color and repaint where I've done that. Particular colors, no one has a, you know, blue and dancerine. I grew up on Winsor Newton. There's no such color like it, so it's not going to be able to get the darks. You might be watching me mix some great colorful darks, you know, and it wouldn't work. So my focal point, that radiance of the focal point, I have those super bright colors. So that's the reason, you know, that I suggest in a workshop a couple of the colors. You don't need all, you know, 16, you know, 3, 4, or 5 colors will get you close so that you have the chance to get that sunlight, that shadow, and that contrast, wiping off dry color, or if you made a mistake and can have fun with it that way. And that gives you a confidence. If you know that you can lift off the color after it dries, when you didn't like it, you'll paint and not worry about making a mistake. So if I can take away the thought of mistakes in watercolor, you'll have more fun and keep on painting more. So just wanted to share with you a little quick explanation of the materials I use and why. There's a lot more to be said about, you know, spray bottles. So join me in a workshop, a lot more to be said about the focal point, some sunlight and shadow. That's what I'm all about. So if you like sunlight and shadow, you like color and contrast, join me for some fun, lots of energy. The beauty of online is you can stop, rewind, fast forward, see it up close, project it on your TV. Holy cow, this is kind of cool for taking a workshop, seeing it that particular way. So I'll slow down, I'll have some fun, I'll take it a step at a time. I hope to see you in class soon. So thanks for letting me share with you a thought about materials and why I use them more than just you got to use them because I said so. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope to see you in class soon. Bye for now. All right, real time. We are 5 minutes from their Zoom, start of their Zoom session, so you can get